Today at work, a discussion came up about banking without this man really quite knowing that was where it was going to turn. He had watched Trump's speech that had to do with the Federal Reserve, but the commission, if I remember correctly, commission or committee, and that Congress is something. I think it's that Trump wants more of an executive power over the committee appointments. But the thing is, what was clear is when I started to discuss the foundation of the Federal Reserve, he didn't know. So it's important now for the right wing to get something about why the Caliph is going to be so important for the non-Christian world. Turkey was trying to establish the Caliph again. But what happened was, this is about, if I remember, Imran Hossein, Imam Imran Hossein brought up that it was, I want to say like the 1890s or the earliest 1900s, that the last Khalifa dies, and he was Turkish. And so there's going to be a discussion that was going to happen in Cairo about who would the new Caliph be. But what was interesting was something that happened to stop the discussions about the next Caliph. It was the French, Germans, and Americans took over the event in a way. They established another meeting. This meeting, if I remember correctly, would be in Mecca. And it would end up being extremely important because it was either in Riyadh or Mecca. And this would establish the entire structure of the petrodollar in the long run. It was the beginning of this, that there would not be a Khalifa, and that there would be this new establishment of oil and power that would come out of Saudi Arabia. The problem is, this would require that sort of something keeps the religion itself in control. The Caliph, that's what he did. He managed the problems and the various powers within the Ummah so that they wouldn't kill each other endlessly like what's happening now. So what ends up happening is the modernists of the Salafi school, and technically modernists in a way of the Wahhabis, end up establishing this kind of new way of thinking about Islam. Now the thing is, they were claiming that this was a reform to make Islam Islamic again. The thing is, when you hear somebody like D.Livingstone discuss this, he actually brings up, he goes, no, it's quite the opposite. What they did is they established the prevalence of Islamic schools and Islamic thinking that were outside of the confines of the Dar al-Salam, if I remember correctly. So it's basically the closing of the doors of the House of Islam ends up creating 4 schools of thought. What we see now was the doors were reopened by crazy people. That's why crazy people blow things up. It's not that Islam is half as crazy as people want to think it is, because you could just look at things like Khartoum and her concerts, or songs that we sample for rap music, such as the song that was sampled for Big Pimpin' by Hafiz, Hosara Hosara. That's obviously very modern in its style, in its fashion. And yet it shows classic ways that Islamic prudence is practiced. And so what's important about this is that the rest of the world that world outside of the Islamic world, outside of the Ummah, doesn't know why the Caliph was important. We don't really get it. Without that central commander, in a way, Pakistan just keeps, the bombings in Pakistan keep happening. Remember, Islam kills more of their own than we really, we're not half as good at it. So if they were to have the Caliph back, this would end, because he would solve these problems and he would tame the militias. That's the idea behind it. You wouldn't have these ideological militias if you didn't have, if you had a Caliph. Now, a lot of people will say, why or why not there is a Caliph? But Imran Hossein really made it clear that a lot of this was about the House of Saud wanting to be rich and powerful forever, because it controls Mecca and Medina. So it's just something to think about. Because one of the best people who ever discussed this was, what's his face? Jay Dyer actually discussed this with Imam Imran Hossein himself. And one of the most interesting things is this idea of the biblical religions. Actually, almost all of the quote-unquote world religions were established with oligarchies and aristocracies as the norm. To them, and to the religious mind, that is the norm of human behavior. This idea that people participate with a vote is kind of this modern contrivance with this idea of like, oh, there was once a republic and Plato and da-da-da-da-da, and so then that even came up. No, Muslims can't agree to the Platonic Republic. Like it's pagan in nature, but two, that is not the governance of humans as established by the Quran, Sunnah, Sirah, and Hadiths, which that's the whole deal. If it doesn't fall in with those, then it's haram. It's more likely to be haram. So I just want to bring this up because I think it's important now that Turkey, the re-Islamization of Turkey, is now really making me think like that a part of the Western right needs to discuss, why are these people leaving their parts of the world anyway? It's not like they don't have electricity, gas, math. I mean, really, you look back, you look at like swinging Persia, when there was Persian rock music. You could look this up right now, Persian rock. Turkish psychedelic rock and roll. Things like that. So it's not like the Islamic world just like sort of stayed in place throughout from like, yeah, it's the Ummah was usurped. Now a lot of people are going to say, I got a really good idea of why maybe this happened. And I know the rumors about the House of Saud, about their true lineage. But all that aside, it's kind of time for some elements of Christendom to be like, they have a way of living and just doing their own thing. None of this in France needs to be. None of this in Germany needs to be happening. None of this needs to be happening. But without understanding that aspect of Islam, you wouldn't know it. Nobody would know, that no, there should be no reason why they're having this kind of problem with their civilization. That this shouldn't be happening with all the wealth these nations have. This shouldn't be happening. And the reason why, and recently the whole thing of the collapse of the welfare state of Saudi Arabia is starting to come up more and more and more that I'm hearing. And so that's another thing too. How do you motivate the men of the Ummah to suddenly have hope when they have harem breeding? So some guys get lots of wives, most guys get few, if any. So it's what do you do about that? How do you motivate these? How do you motivate Joe Momo to become like a highly respectable person who runs a good business, and just so that you have a functioning economy of that region, and especially if the whole greening of the Sahara thing turns out to be a significant trend. The cooling of the Atlantic is actually one of these things. I'm really wondering what we're going to see come like about a year from now. With, did they get rain? Did they get crops? Are they once again getting locust swarms? That kind of thing across that part of the world. So just some thoughts I'm having. Blazes hot. Blazes. And now just nobody even shows up for work. It's just us old guys. Only the old guys. And the people who they need the money. They don't like poverty. They need the money. Otherwise, people are just like, man, just you guys keep doing this stuff to me, man. I don't like it. So, all right, later.